today. So if you want to share it afterwards, we'll post a link and it'll be available in that forum post I highlighted in the shared Google document. It's just beneath the list of attendees. So you'll see that link appear for today's meeting as well as previous sessions of these roundtable meetings. So before we get started, do you want to remind everyone of IMS's intellectual property rights policy, under which all of IMS meetings operate. You can find that policy published at imsglobal.org/IP, and it requires us to read the following statement. Please inform me if you are personally aware of any claims under an existing patent or application for a patent that would be likely to be infringed by an implementation of the specification or other work product that's the subject of this meeting. You need not be the inventor of such patent or patent application in order to inform us that a claim might exist, nor will you be held responsible for expressing a belief that turns out to be inaccurate. And if you'd rather discuss or disclose IP-related information outside of this meeting, you can always contact me or another IMS staff member at any time. IMS also has a group participation agreement that's published at imsglobal.org/PA. And that participation agreement essentially asks that the details of the discussions in these meetings, any documents we're creating, not be shared outside of the membership of this group. And that includes all IMS members that are part of the Learning Tools and Content Alliance, any affiliate members, and contributing members. So thank you for your attendance today. And especially for those who might be attending for the first time. So these meetings, the main objective is to encourage adoption of LTI Advantage. And as part of that, we've gone through demonstrations of various platforms or tools that have already implemented LTI Advantage and given them an opportunity to describe some of their implementation details, any specific unique circumstances or approaches that came into play in their implementation, adoption of LTI 1.3 and the security framework and the Advantage extensions. So previously we've heard or seen Blackboard, Moodle, Turnitin, Cengage. That might be all. Sorry if I missed anyone that's already done a demo. And today we'll hear from Canvas Instructure. So, and that's the main part of our agenda for today's meeting. And then we'll open it up for any questions, questions that arise today, as from the demo that you see, or individually, if you are experiencing any issues or have specific questions that would help you in your adoption of LTI Advantage. You have on the call many of the LTI project group participants, the chairs of the leadership of that group, as well as those who have an insider knowledge and understanding of the workings of LTI, the certification test suite, any of the resources that IMS makes available for the LTI Advantage set of specifications. So if questions come up, please make note of them, post a note in the chat or here in the shared Google document, and we'll have some time at the end of our meeting to discuss that. I just wanted to quickly point out too, in case towards the end of the call, depending on how much time we have, that we will not have a roundtable meeting in December, given the end of the year, holidays, Christmas time. So our potentially tentative date for our next roundtable meeting will be the 4th Tuesday of January, which is the 28th of 2020. So keep that in mind for our next gathering. So does anyone have any immediate questions? All right. You might see a couple of polling survey type questions that pop up during the meeting. I'll see if we want to gather some more details, some of the same questions that we posed last time about where you are in your implementation plans and how helpful these meetings are, et cetera. So if you've already answered those and don't feel like your answer's changed at all, you can just ignore it. But I'll be posting a few polling questions throughout the meeting as well. So, all right, if there's nothing else, let's jump right into our demonstration from Canvas. And I think, Jesse, you were gonna provide that. Feel free to take control of the screen. Jesse, I'm not hearing you if you're speaking. Is anyone?
He has a phone icon. Maybe you could unmute his thing for him.
Let me see.
There we go.
All right.
Can you guys hear me now?
Yeah.
Hey, okay. Yeah, I'm Jesse Polis. I'm a technical product manager here at Instructure, primarily over the LTI component of Canvas. Canvas uses what we call developer keys to sort of store the tool configuration for the LTI 1.3 tool configuration. We can do this at either an account level, so in this case it's in my sandbox, or we can also do it at sort of like a SaaS level for Canvas, where Instructure works with the vendor to get a developer key and configure it. I'll go into that a little bit later, but the first thing I wanted to kick into is sort of how do we actually configure the tools, because really, at the end of the day, the user experience for teachers and students with LTI 1.3 is not vastly different from previous versions of LTI. It's really the configuration process, the backend authentication, and the services that are available for the LTI vendor to implement. So in terms of the user experience for students and teachers, there's not a whole lot that's different, but what's a lot different here is for admins actually configuring the tool. So to do this, they come in here and create an LTI key. And the first thing that's apparent is that there's several methods. So you can do a manual entry, you can paste a configuration or enter a URL. We had manual entry in previous versions of LTI, but one of the cool new things here is that you actually have the ability to manage the placements that are available in the configuration. That was not something available in our UI in previous versions. So that's kind of a big deal in terms of the ability to configure things. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a JSON payload that I got from Chuck for Sugi. And in here, we've got scopes defined, and then we've got this extensions section here, and then basically this platform just says, hey, this is Canvas that's doing the launch, and then we can use the placements setting here to actually say I want a course navigation, assignment selection, link selection, and an editor button placement. In this case, it's just a basic LTI launch. And here we're using this to specify that I want to use a deep linking request as well on these. Now, another thing that's kind of cool is that you can say I want a different launch URL for each placement. So this placement uses this for the target link URI, which is the area where the app will do the final redirect after the launch. And then in this case, he's using this LTI/store, but he's also using this as an indicator for himself to say, the tool can say, oh, I want to know when this launch happens from assignment selection, because maybe I want to show a different user experience than when it's happening from some other location, like the editor button here. And then they're able to also put the JSON web key in here, and this is used for the LTI services to do signing. And then you're able to specify custom fields and a global sort of more general target link URI, and then the actual endpoint where the launch will initiate for each OIDC login request. And then you can specify redirect URIs. You can have multiple here if you wanted to have different redirect URIs for whatever reason. So all I need to do now is just give it a name, put an owner email address, and any notes that I want, and that's it. So you'll notice this is, now we can save it. We can see now we've got, here are the services that are available. These are the LTI Advantage services and the scopes associated with them. And I can see which placements are there. I can see that these ones support deep linking, and then the privacy level. And I can add any additional custom fields at this point. So once I save it, I'm not done yet. I still have to turn the key on. And then I'm still not done, because really what this has done is it's defined the configuration of the tool. I haven't actually deployed the tool at all yet. This is just saying, this is what I want the tool to look like when I do deploy it, when I actually do install it somewhere. So I could deploy it in a course level, or an account, a sub-account level, or I'm in a demo here, just in the root account. And so what that's going to do is it's going to make it available to everybody in the entire account, every course that's in the account. So I can go in like I normally would and add an app, but now I've got this new option called configuration by client ID, and all I have to do is go ahead and paste this in, that client ID, and submit, and it says this is just a confirmation that I got the tool that I was expecting, and then I can go ahead and install it. And at this point, I'm still not quite done, because the tool probably wants to know what the client ID is for that developer key, and it probably wants to know what the deployment ID is. So we expose the deployment ID here so that you can send this to the tool. Usually the tool will have some sort of interface where you can put this in. There's some things to streamline this that we're working on with the LTI group right now, in terms of a better way to sort of pass that critical data back to the tool. I'm not going to go into detail on that here. And then that's it. That's pretty much the configuration and deployment process. I wanted to just show a couple more notes that are of interest here. The first one is that if I go in here and I actually edit this key, and say I changed something here, like I don't want to do course navigation anymore. So I'm going to go ahead and save that. What happens is we actually kick off a back-end job that goes through all of the tool deployments and updates that so that any tool deployed in the account now has that new setting. So this is kind of a big deal for us, because if you had an account where the tools were deployed at, say, several hundred different courses, the admin would have to go in and manually update each one of those. But now, because we've got it paired with this developer key, any settings that change on that developer key can be pushed out to any deployed tool. So that's a big time saver. So that's kind of something that's cool and new that the framework has allowed us to do at Canvas. And then the other thing that's pretty cool is if I go ahead and turn the state off, say I found some security issue, or the Sugi server was down or undergoing maintenance, maybe I just want to hide that tool for a little bit. I can actually turn it off, and we'll just go ahead and see what that looks like. And now it's not there. It's gone. But I don't have to go in if I'm ready to turn it back on and redeploy the tool everywhere. I just turn it back on, and we kick off another job to reinstate that same tool configuration that was there before. Nothing changes. The deployment ID is the same. All the identifiers are the same, but it sort of lets the admin control maybe if there's some temporal period where they don't want to have that tool exposed, they can turn that off. So that's a new kind of cool thing that this lets us do too. And then the last thing that's pretty exciting is that you'll notice up here we've got the ability to install these tools at the account level, like I mentioned, but we have this tab called Inherited. And these are developer keys that Instructure has set up so that any customer of ours has access to the developer key. So these already have pre-configured things using pretty much the exact same UI I just demoed, just at what we call a site admin level. And so that lets me or somebody at Instructure go ahead and talk to a vendor and get their developer key set up, so that all that the admin now has to do is go ahead and come in here and turn the thing on, grab the deployment, the client ID, and go deploy the tool. And so that's the way that a lot of our vendors so far have really liked to go, because it takes some of the potential error out of the process in terms of potentially somebody editing the configuration or something like that. Now, that nobody has to do this. They don't have to use these. If they wanted to, they could insist on using this account deployment and work with the tool to pass that information over. But that's pretty much it. I'm not going to show the launch of the tool because, like I mentioned, it all looks the same from the tool launching perspective. It's that configuration process that's just mainly different.
Hey Jesse, are you able to show anything to do with your implementation of assignments and grades? Because that's new for 1.3.
I don't have anything set up right now to demo assignment and grades. I was mainly going to focus on the tool configuration part of things.
Okay.
Hey Jesse, this is Eric. I was wondering, and maybe you did this and I wasn't paying attention, but where does the tool get the information it needs to configure itself? You showed the deployment ID part, but there's all kinds of URLs and issuers and stuff like that, and maybe I just missed that.
So in terms of the tool getting like the audience and issuer?
Yeah.
You know, I thought most of that came over in the first launch, but that's a good question. If that's something critical for the tool to know before a launch, then we probably should.
Well, I mean, at a minimum, it needs to know the client ID and the, well, it needs to know the issuer so it can validate that it's expecting a call from there, I would think. And it needs to know where to get the public key. I guess it only needs to know that if it's going to make a call. No, it needs to check the signature. So.
And the token endpoints, you know, and
yeah,
a few things.
I
But maybe those, it's static.
A lot of that's
if it's
over
static,
in our documentation.
Oh,
Okay.
gotcha. That makes sense.
So
sure,
if you look in our documentation, we've got sort of like, we actually have a whole section that I added here for configuring Canvas in the tool. So like, here's our public JWKs, and then we talk about authorization redirect. So hopefully it's all here. Deployment ID, things like that. So yeah, the deployment ID is on the tool deployment when you actually edit it.
Right, I saw that. Okay.
And the client ID is there. So hopefully this is all here. If not, definitely let me know if there's like things that you would hope to see here that are not shown.
No, that's cool. Thanks.
Yep. Yeah, and we just redid the docs here. So we've actually incorporated in our API docs all the new LTI 1.3 related things. So you can see like all the field descriptions and things like that for that JSON payload and an example payload here. And then we also kind of come into, like I've described in the placement sort of some things like, for example, here for our course navigation placement, here's how you would configure it. And then sort of actually talking about use cases and the actual workflow that the end user would experience, so that if somebody's never used Canvas, they can come in here and kind of get an idea of, hey, this is how people typically use course navigation, for example.
So a tool looking to integrate with Canvas, this is the documentation area they'd want to start with?
Yes, absolutely. So in fact, you could start in the introduction here and go through. We still talk about our 1.1 things here, but a lot of that has been separated explicitly out in the docs of here's the 1.3 stuff, here's the 1.1 stuff, and it's kind of buried at the bottom of our left-hand nav. But yeah, you have configuration. We talk about our variable substitutions, and the deep linking assignment and grades. So like in deep linking here, we kind of go over like which placements support deep linking, how to configure it, and then we still refer to like that old LTI 1.1 stuff too if you need to check that out. With grading, we kind of go through how that's configured, what services are available, and links to the actual endpoints there, and sort of going over the OAuth 2 client credentials grant that you can kind of go through here and get an idea of some of those other like processes that are more deeply involved than just launching a tool.
And Jesse, I know we talked a bit a couple of weeks ago about migration, but for the simplest case, LTI 1.1 basic outcome setup, how do you see a tool? What would be the best approach for a tool to move to an LTI 1.3 model?
So one of the main difference in Canvas is we had to change the LTI user ID, the actual value of it. So if you've got previous users in LTI 1.1 and their ID will change in the 1.3 launch, but we've added a substitution variable that's that part of the spec. I can't remember what the variable is called. It's the
legacy something, right?
Yeah, it's the 1.1 ID.
Yeah, the LTI, so that you can get that LTI 1.1 ID and the new ID and remap them in your system. So that's one part of migration. The other part is actually reconfiguring the tool. So the best practice would probably be to actually just remove the LTI 1.1 tool and install the 1.3 counterpart. And so long as the domains match on the old and new tool configuration, any of your previously embedded links should still launch using that new LTI 1.3 tool. So you don't have to go through and update all your links or anything like that are embedded in the course.
And for the basic outcome standpoint, then would we get a line item URL kind of to replace the basic outcome service URL we might have gotten under 1.1 mechanic?
We haven't done that.
Yeah, well, that's something that we were going to check in on after you brought that up at the quarterly meeting. What happened with the line items? Do we create those on those older, like say there's an old assignment? Do we actually create those line items when that 1.3 tool is installed? My assumption is that we don't, so we may have a little bit of work to actually generate the line items for any assignments in Canvas that were previously configured.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Because from a specification perspective, there is a clear mapping from basic outcome to line item URL, so it'd be great if that could happen.
Good to know. So yeah, are there other questions? That's the kind of the extent of my demo.
Actually, I was interested. Can you review the different level of deployments that you can have in
Sure.
Canvas? I understand they could be very granular or very wide.
Yeah, so let's say I wanted to come in here and I could come in here. I think one thing to note is that you don't really want to like deploy at both levels. So I wouldn't want to deploy here at my root level and at a sub-account level, but I could come in here, say I have, oops, wrong button. Let's say I have a sub-account here that has, that I just want to use for, say my L2 support team to do some testing with before I actually take it to my whole account. I can go into my sub-account here, and I could deploy it the same way, like this. And that will make it available to any courses inside of this sub-account. I don't happen to have any, but if I were to create a course here, it would have access to that tool deployment. The other one is if I go into we'll just pick a random course here. I could go into any course and say I only want it to be available at this course. I can use the exact same UI pretty much and deploy it here as well.
Okay.
And that'll make it only available to this course. So one thing some admins may consider is say, I want to just let a handful of teachers install this. I don't want to do it myself. I'm just going to share the client ID with the teacher to be able to install the tool.
And so therefore it's going to be a very narrow deployment IDs, like in this case it would be
each deployment will have a different ID. So you may have multiple deployment IDs in a single instance of Canvas potentially if you want to support this.
Yep. Okay.
Are there any plans to kind of have almost like a app store picker rather than having to paste in client IDs?
Yeah, we're working to kind of sort of maybe replace what we've done with Edu App Center, which kind of looks like this right now, with an LTI 1.3 sort of scenario where you could actually just pick any available deployment or any available tools like from a list or something like that that are in the account. And potentially someday we may even have like a separate sort of app store experience as well. But the idea could be that, you know, instead of pasting a client ID in, you pick from a list in a drop-down of tools that are available in that account.
Cool. Thanks.
So when you deploy, is there an opportunity to review as a local admin what are the and maybe change some of the options of the tool, or are they configured once and for all? And
that's a good question. We've discussed some sort of ability to edit like a deployment, so that maybe you wanted to opt out of course navigation for just this deployment or something like that. Mm-hmm. We've discussed that. We have the framework available like back-end wise to do that kind of thing. We just haven't built a front end for it. But the idea would be that you could maybe opt out of some of the placements, or potentially, I guess, opt in to placements and services. Okay. In custom fields. Those would probably be the three things: placements, custom fields, and services. Is that in line with the use case you're thinking of, is being able to manage one of those three things?
Yes. And what I think in general, like also privacy options, I guess, would be something to consider. Like maybe we'd want to restrict
the privacy level.
Yeah, and at least at the very minimum, easily review what's this tool is.
Yeah, maybe just a summary view of what's going on potentially.
Yeah, to start with, right? You know, like you know, you're getting, because I understand that if you start removing things, it might not work. So there is a bit of a double-edged sword in that. But at least reviewing, you know, what is this tool about? I'm not familiar enough.
I mean, we have that to a minor degree here with the placements, but we could probably expand that to be a little more comprehensive.
Yeah, especially, I guess, around privacy and service access. You know, can you get post grades and stuff like that?
Mm-hmm.
And so the process to get a global key is to enter directly in a relationship with you guys, right? To get
right now you'd reach out to me or Carl, or if you've got a partnership with us, you'd kind of reach out through your partner group, your partner team, your partner manager, and we could kick off conversations of sort of like, what do we need to do and any additional steps. We hope to someday make it so that you don't have to reach out to us, but that's a very large project. But it's something that we've been thinking about is there a way we can streamline this so that you can kind of manage your own sort of global deployment or global configuration within Canvas without having to reach out to us.
Jesse, one more question on your configuration. The example that you gave of the JSON that you pasted in had the JWKS or the JWK kind of already there. Do you also support WKS URL?
Yes, we do. I guess I didn't demo that, but I'll show you where that shows up in the configuration. Let's go ahead and go over here. You have the option when you're doing this to pick either a URL, which would allow you to sort of change what's on the other side of that if you wanted to, or you can pick this method here. We also have an API endpoint that once you get a client credentials grant access token, you can rotate that through an API request as well if you wanted to rotate the JWK on it.
Cool. Thanks.
Interesting. Can you, are you set up to do some deep linking demo? I mean,
All
has there
right,
been
any other
changes?
questions?
Yeah, has there been any changes around deep linking behavior?
Not in the user interface is the same for Canvas. Kind of like I mentioned, the UI is the same, the launching looks the same. So the experience that teachers and students have is exactly the same. So it's just the actual backend implementation of things that, as part of the spec, that changed.
Okay.
Can the authentication token and the client credentials grant be used for Canvas API calls as well as the LTI ones? Does it extend?
No, because the Canvas API requires a user to be involved, so we use an authorization code grant on that. Whereas the client credentials grant is sort of like just given to the tool.
Okay.
The token belongs to the tool. So once you get a client credentials token, you can actually run the requests for any course where that tool is installed, where that tool is available.
So if you're using both, then you create an API key and an LTI key?
Yeah, you'd still need to go through the authorization workflow and where we present a user interface to the user, and you still have to request access to their data.
Mm-hmm. So when is this going actually for public release? Is this like, when is this going to be publicly available, or is this already?
Yeah, this is all in production now.
Okay.
We've got several vendors that have got their tools set up and running, and like Adobe, for example, is piloting some stuff right now with their Creative Cloud and Adobe Spark apps. So yeah, we're ready to go in terms of the implementation of this.
All right, just in case, Mark McKell's been getting kicked out by Zoom a lot, but any other questions for Jesse before we move on to some of the other questions we had, generic questions we have? Great. So thank you very much, Instructor folks. We had one question that Claude was going to address, Claude, about LTI mobile stuff. Did you want to talk to that?
Well, so my approach on that, LTI mobile, we understand it's very important, but I think we're still, at least I am still pretty much in a discovery phase. So we try to gather use cases and truly understand what is meant by what do we want to do with LTI mobile? What is the end goal? Is that the ability to launch an LTI apps from the web, app to app? What are the kind of use cases we are? And if some, and we're also trying to gather information about people who have already done some experimentation or some have some ideas in this area, because I think the core, the working group at its core is not a very mobile. It's developer. I mean, so that's it's not a skill set we are very strong at. So we're really much looking up for input to that. We realize it's very important to start to build a better answer to LTI and mobile. But when at least I'm not sure exactly what is it that we mean by that always, you know. So if we can get use cases, what people are looking at, what they would like to achieve, what they would like to see LTI playing mobile, and that would help us understand where we need to go and what we need to specify, or at least come up with some level of best practices in that space.
Hi, Claude. This is Kimberly Gray from UVI. I'm a new member. I just attended the conference in Microsoft. So our platform is a video response tool for higher ed. So a use case for us is an instructor can add text that will appear in the video capture screen for the student who responds with a 15-second video comment, which loads in a feed. So at a standalone app. So just trying to understand, I know you have Kaltura, but what other, especially mobile versions that could be up the pipeline?
So are you asking like what kind of other mobile LTI usage there is out there?
Well, I guess that's one of the use cases that we would be very interested in.
Oh, yeah. No, that's great to hear. And the thing is that we'd like to understand, how do you see it in practice? Because LTI is very much, at least up until now, very much still LMS centered. And you start from the LMS and you go to the tool. And in that transfer, the LTI message, we carry the context of execution. But you start always from the LMS and then you launch. So the question is that still a valid use case to say you start from the LMS, which possibly could be the LMS mobile app, TBD, and from there you launch another app, or are you looking for possibly cases where the app would find ways to, at least for the app to be directly used without having to go through the LMS?
Exactly, either standalone and plugging into the LMS.
Okay, yeah, because I think historically the standalone is much harder it's much harder use case to come around, because how do you hook up on the actual context? So I think this is where I've heard of some workaround and some practices like caching. Like once you've done one launch from the LMS, you're able to remember some of the credentials, which allows the app to be used standalone. And so it's more like best practice. So if you want to join the group, we've set up a small little group here trying to get use case. If you can summarize that use case and maybe join for discussion, see what kind of a problem space we're dealing with, actually.
Okay, sounds good. I'll definitely set something up. I have a call with Colin on next week after the house.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. You know, at least as you can hear it, I've no answers yet. I have more questions.
Okay, we'll work on it. Thank you.
Right.
Anything else on the mobile stuff from anybody? All right. So Claude or someone else, I had a question in chat that has been answered on a previous, more thoroughly on a previous one of these calls, so there'll be a good recording on that. But the question is around the new grade assignment and grade service, and kind of contrasting it to the LTI 1.1 use case, where you could only ever send a grade back when you came on an LTI launch. So the question essentially is, how do you approach creating line items, sending grades to those line items for directly logging into an app or via LTI launches that didn't have the grade associated with them? So just can you give like a high level overview of how assignment and grades would work for other grade columns, and then we'll also just refer to the previous more in-depth discussion on that. So just a review of that. Can one of you do that quickly?
Yes, I can try, and anybody else can jump on in there to complement. But so the thing around creating gradebook columns. So there are two ways to create gradebook columns. One is very much unlike the previous basic outcome, which was when you create a link, you can express through deep linking that you want this link to actually be gradable, and then rely on the learning management system to actually understand that and create a line item on your behalf as part of importing that link. So it imports a gradable link, it will create a gradebook column for it. And then anytime you're going to launch that link, the actual URL where to post grades for that line item will be included in the LTI message payload. So it's a bit similar to when you were getting the basic outcome service and the basic the LIS user source ID in 1.1. So you get the line item URL. So the line item is created directly by the LMS and is passed to you on launch. But also what you can get access now is the line items URL, which also allows you to discover at any time all the line items of your tools that exist currently in the gradebook, and I allow you to discover this and basically bind and send grades. So what that means is that you don't need to launch a specific link to be able to report grades on that link, because you can launch another link, go to your tool, and discovers the actual bucket, the line item URL of the other link through querying the line items URL and be able to report grades. So that's the number one mechanics, is where you create gradebook columns through deep linking, and the LMS is going to create a gradebook column, and you're going to discover it either by querying the line items URL or basically just looking at your LTI message payload. But the assignment on grade service also allows you to just create ad hoc gradebook columns in the LMS gradebook, where you're going to be able to push grades. And so for that, those gradebook columns don't have to be explicitly tied to a given link. You can just launch a link and say you arrive in a place, and you can say, I want this outcomes for this and this and this activity to be returned to the LMS, and have through an API call, have those 3 buckets created. And when you create one of those, then you get back a line item URL. Every time you create one, you get back a line item URL from the LMS, and that's going to be the URL you're going to use to post grades back to the LMS. But I don't know if that answers it, or
I think that's good. Seemed to be like a more high-level question. But we do, Claude and Martin, I believe, have addressed this more thoroughly in previous roundtables, and so there will definitely be a bit more in-depth on those recordings, which are available, like Mark Mikkel pointed to at the beginning.
Yeah,
is there
I think
a way
so. Just
to identify?
Sorry?
Is there a way to identify which recordings those are? Is it mentioned in some notes?
I didn't remember offhand. Maybe someone else does.
No worries.
Yeah, I think Mark is with a list of others somewhere in IMS, but with the day. But I don't know if the day includes also the subject, or if it's just
Right.
the day. So if it's just the day, it's not so useful. So maybe you could put the subject there.
Yeah, we'll put that as an action item too. If it's not clear what's covered there, we'll try to get that added, because that would obviously be very useful. So
yeah, as much as you could. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Yeah. And we have an LTI. Well, I think there is this question about do we want to put that or not? But Bracken has started a list of resources around LTI, and I understand those Roundtable are for members only. But I think they're still very legit to be on this overall resource page. You know, something to see if you can put it in there, even if you say members only on the link itself.
I've posted a link in the chat to the forum where all of the roundtable meetings are listed, so you can go back and watch any of them. Sadly, it doesn't have the description or the agenda, but I think the agenda doc should have previous agendas on it. So if you scroll down in the current roundtable agenda doc, you should be able to work out which date relates to which information.
yeah, that'll be good to get those added to that
if you can
post as well.
If you can hear me, this is Mark Mikkel. I'm back, but it
We
seems
can hear
to
you,
keep
Mark.
dropping me. So, okay. Yeah, so I'll take an action to add a brief summary to each of those video recordings, so it's clear from that forum post and the links where we have those, what each video is showing. So, but as Martin said, you can look at the main agenda document and just scroll to the bottom and see a full list. I'll add that to the forum, though. Thanks for pointing that out. All right, thanks, Bracken, for taking over. Hopefully you're all still hearing me and I don't drop mid-sentence. If I do, Bracken can close up the call. Are there any other questions? All right, I think part of the issue may be the polling or something, so that might, I'll avoid the last question. Just
could I ask?
Go ahead.
Could I
Was someone
answer that last question?
something?
Yeah. Just wondering about the submission review. When that companion spec, or how far along that is, or if that's been prioritized or not. So sending messaging.
The document, if you have access to the GitHub repo where that document is located, that's been updated with a respec HTML version of the document that we'll publish in the next couple of weeks. There's been an issue around the naming of the context group service that, again, is somewhat related to, it's built on top of LTI 1.3, so it's not formally part of LTI Advantage, but it's a new extension along with a context group and a caliper connector service extension that is meant to further advance what LTI can do related to some of these other use cases that have come in. So the process for that is internally, as a project group, the LTI group has been working on these, developing the documentation, and has approved the three I just named, and well, the two I named and the one you named, the submission review. And those now need to go through an IPR, intellectual property rights review period, by the IMS membership before we would publish those as a formal HTML document. Initially, they would just be released to IMS members only, and then over time, we'll decide as a group when those would be released more widely as a public document. But they should be published in the next 2 weeks as a final member candidate final draft. So they're still in that process of going through the IPR review.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. That
but if you do have GitHub access, you can access the same version that would be published currently. It is available in the GitHub repo.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
I've added the link also for the Google Drive, Google Doc around mobile, so call for participation. So feel free to go in there, and if you have a copy paste a use case, if you have, and put your name if you want to join. We're not too sure exactly which step it's going to take, but maybe we'll set up a call or a couple of calls at least to touch the water and have a few people, brainstorm on exactly where we want to go on that matter.
Okay, great. Thanks, Claude. Any other questions? Okay, well, thank you for being here today. Again, we'll make this recording available in that forum post, and we'll add some descriptions to what each of those recordings includes, so you can more easily navigate and share these videos over time. And given the date when this next meeting would fall in December, we will not have a roundtable during December, but we will meet again on the 28th of January. So thanks for your participation in these roundtable meetings the last several months. We'll take a holiday break and wish you all the same, happy holidays, and talk to you again in January. And thanks, Jesse and Canvas, for doing the demonstration today.
Yep, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Jesse.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.